I'm Wolf the Bard. You might remember me from such hit Flesh and Blood videos as Rip Starvo and why you should play this game. I'm here to talk to you today about Flesh and Blood's upcoming player versus environment product, thereby starting the discussion with the good people of the community. On April 12th of 2022, James White wrote about Flesh and Blood 2.0, outlines all the challenges and future products we'll see, and in it, he mentions PvE. Now, while I enjoy the competitiveness that is Flesh and Blood, I started to reminisce about the old World of Warcraft TCG, done by Upper Deck and later by Cryptozoic. The similarities between both allowed me to pick up Flesh and Blood quite quickly, and during Tales of Aria, myself and my LGS mates were talking about that, and the rumors of PvP and PvE, and how it would go, and what would draw players in. WoW's raid and dungeon packs were a highlight of my college days. My mates and I would sit down and just play a bunch of games. Even though we didn't play the MMO, we liked the camaraderie of just taking down a boss and exhausting our resources. It was fun. Something a lot of games, I think, need today. Unlike the MMO, the TCG's raid and dungeon packs were meant for multiplayer games. The boss deck was played by an appointed boss player, and gameplay was still the same. Bosses had a few different advantages, multiple forms, a larger hand size, and a few other little things depending on what boss you were playing. They could also have multiple phases, which made games take a little bit longer. And those phases could change from either damage dealt, having certain cards on the field, having certain cards left in the deck. And how the bosses played, they either summoned creatures or dealt damage individually in the form of AoEs or singular strikes directed to certain players. Now, after defeating the boss, clearing the dungeon, just like the MMO, there was loot. This loot came in forms of packs, sometimes ranging from alternate art stuff. Sometimes it came with codes that you could possibly use for the MMO. Now, before I talk about my theories on what LSS could do with PvE, I'd also like to mention another game that we could see some similarities into what we might walk into. Sentinels of the Multiverse by Greater Than Games, a self-contained tabletop game that allows players, similar to WoW TCG's PvE, players would take on the role of comic book heroes and fight against autonomous villain decks and a separate environment deck. Now, both of them were actually solo decks. No one would touch them until a criteria was met, but the villain would play a card every turn on its own, and same thing with the environment. Having multiple villains and environments in this product allowed games to never feel quite the same. The environment deck, while meant to help the villain, heroes could take advantage of it as well. And maybe we could see something similar with this upcoming product. But what can LSS do to make this product sustainable and attractive to players? Make it fun, but that's easier said than done. So let's talk about what we could experience. What plot points we could see for a PvE product. Now, with the most recent story about Dorinthia and her battle at Morlock Hill, Dorinthia leading her group to battle and ultimately not having the greatest of days. So depending on the suggested player size of this product, we could see these battles unfold, or be a part of it. And similar to Magic's Horde mode, maybe the first product we'll see is where the deck is just filled with allies, or little minions that we could take on every turn until we get overwhelmed, or until we beat it, or until a certain requirement happens and reinforcements comes in. Now, how big is the enemy deck? Given that Flesh and Blood doesn't have a deck out mechanic, and to eventually allow this PvE game to end, I would suggest a boss deck of maybe 90 to 100 cards. Depending on how they want to play this out, it could just be consisted of allies that have enter the battlefield effects. maybe with spells that we've somewhat seen in terms of like arcane damage, where we could just tweak it to be in like an AoE or a random event if it's not controlled by a player. And once these spells and creatures are played, they would just go straight to exile. So the boss deck doesn't have to be tied to a resource. Everything's just one and done. Now, borrowing from Sentinels, we could see an environment deck. Traveling the world of Wraith while on story is great, and we do get to see bits and pieces in card art. I think actually seeing these environments and being able to experience battle, or just a story, would be really cool. So maybe with an environment deck we could go with 5 to 10 cards for that deck. It would allow for games not to feel so similar if they started off randomly at any point in time, rather than a fixed starting point. And these environment cards could have a turn timer, or if a certain deed was accomplished, they would change. We could also see that maybe, similar to Morlock Hill, if we start to get overrun, the environment starts to get eaten away. So we have an incentive to maybe try to fight this horde to keep things the same. I do think there needs to be a boss to head these decks. If maybe LSS doesn't want to create certain heroes, whether they're too strong or they feel like it just wouldn't thematically make sense to see them on, a Blitz deck or just, a regular game, or maybe we could turn to living legends like Viscerai or Everfest's newly minted living legend, Bravo, star of the show. It would allow people to rally against a common enemy for the game. The replayability of this product needs to be high. And in order for it to succeed, I think each of these PvE decks don't need to necessarily rely on things like battle. While cool, Flesh and Blood does have mechanics like dice rolling. The warrior class currently has things that involve coins. And maybe we could see other cool things implemented that maybe LSS doesn't want to put in for current standard formats we have. Maybe we can also include these into things like Red Zone Rogue's favorite form, Ultimate Pit Fight, and have cards for that without interfering with current game standards. An important note though, these decks and cards need to be unique. I don't think any card from PvE should ever be allowed in Classic, Constructed, or Brawl. And if the cards are mechanically unique, that's okay. But they need to stay outside of tournament play. Make them oversized if need be to prevent any confusion and any feel bad from any new player buying this product and then finding out they can't play with it in events. At least it prevents confusion. With that said, there needs to also be an initiative for players to want to buy this. My thoughts are similar to how WoW did it. Have prize packs. Put existing cards in these packs, have an assortment of 10 to maybe 20 cards, and you can either do equipment, weapons, or other cards with unique art. They don't have to be rainbow foil or cold foil, but that would be nice. This would allow players to win something without the cards being exclusive. Since the already existing game, players may not want to go out and get them, but for people who want to bling out their deck, there's always a reason to do so. Have the packs be about 3 to 5 cards, so that groups can either chip in or buy their own for just said prizes. This solves the issues of LGSs getting stuck with overstock. And now we need to talk about one of the more important things. Price. With the announcement of Legendary Battles Rhinar vs. Dorinthia and the MSRP suggesting $49.99, these either need to be priced similar or, in my opinion, less. While you can get the old WoW stuff for $25 or cheaper, at the time of the release, it was closer to around $40. So if the game is meant for 4 players and each person chipping in $10, it would at least allow for new players to maybe want to pick this up and play with their friends. Get into the game and maybe have some small events at the LGS. Now, if this product comes out once a year or every other year, I think that's going to be fine. This doesn't need to be Commander. It does not need 5 products being released a year. Maybe a holiday product, or a product between big events. If maybe LSS wants to do a main storyline and they want us to experience the climax for ourselves, we could do it that way. Maybe we'll see more of Dorinthia's battles in this PvE product. Or maybe we could take on the winners of Everfest and play in a carnival. I think that would also be really cool. I'm excited to see what LSS has in store for us, and when it comes out, I'm gonna do a review on it. But now I'm gonna pass the question off to you. What are your hopes for this product? What are your hopes for Flesh and Blood? Do you like my suggestions? Do you disagree? Let's get a conversation started and let me know down below. Thanks for watching what is now officially my first Flesh and Blood video, and I'll see you all next time. Have a good one, everyone.